Today I want to talk to you about why we get fat, but most importantly, why we stay fat. A lot of people talk to me and they say, I used to be very slim when I was younger. I used to be very fit, so I didn't put weight on usually when I was younger, or I might have been in a sport or whatever. But recently I've put weight on and I find it really hard to get the weight off. Or as soon as I start putting weight on, I just really can't control it. It's just like started spiraling out of control, and it's a real struggle. And I'm trying sort of this diet, that diet, this exercise program, the other exercise program. Nothing seems to be really working for me. So today, some of the other videos will talk to you about exercise and the best way to exercise for weight loss and so on. But today, we're going to address the issue of why it's so hard for you to lose body fat. Okay, so we need to look at history first of all. So when did obesity, we're all aware that obesity has become an epidemic. When did obesity become an epidemic? Well, it became an epidemic in 1977. And that was when the United States released the directive that too much fat in our diet was making us fat, and that we needed to reduce the amount of fat that we ate and eat more sort of starch carbohydrates like bread, potatoes, pasta, rice and so on. So this is lower in fat, so this is going to be a lot more effective for us. Prior to 1977, if you ever had a problem with weight, the basic way of thinking then was to eat more fats, predominantly animal fats. And there wasn't really a problem with obesity. Of course, some people were overweight, but there was no problem with obesity. In 1977, when the directive came out about reducing fat, that's when obesity became the huge epidemic that it is today. So if we look how that's affecting us now, so we are surrounded by low fiber, high carbohydrate foods. Our body can't possibly adapt to this level of carbohydrates and such low fiber, and it's having an effect on our body. Okay, so let's look at why we store fat in the first place. Now, the big problem hormone here for storing fat is insulin. Even if you look at diabetics who inject insulin, most of them will inject around the stomach area. A lot of them suffer with the complaint known as lipohypertrophy, and that's actual fat storage around the sites where they inject. Where the actual injection site is, there'll be a buildup of fat there, and that's purely because the insulin is being released into that area. So just hold on to that thought for a moment. So let's look now at what happens when we eat our carbohydrates. So we eat our carbohydrates and they're converted into glucose. That's what our body does because our body needs glucose for energy. Now the energy sources that we need glucose in our muscles. It's about 200 grams they believe is the amount that our body needs in our muscles. And then our liver needs about 70 grams. We take in this glucose and insulin is released because insulin is the key to deliver the glucose to our cells that our body needs. So the insulin is delivering the glucose to the cells. So once we've got that 200 grams in the muscle, 70 grams in the liver, the glucose needs to go somewhere. The body stores it as triglycerides, and then those triglycerides go to your body into fat cells, and there you go. That's body fat. And that's when the problem starts. That's when we start to notice the fat increasing in our body. So the body now is starting to get fat because of these carbohydrates. So now let's look at our energy levels. Our preferred source of energy is from those fat cells. That's what the body wants. So our body wants to release that energy from the fat cells when the body needs it, and there we go. That's how we sustain our energy levels. But because we're eating too many carbohydrates, this is producing more insulin. And then what's happening? This is preventing hormone-sensitive lipase, which is responsible for delivering the fat into the system as energy, is insulin sensitive, so it can't work effectively. So the fat stays in the fat cells. So there we have it. So the insulin is preventing the fat to produce as energy, and this in turn is causing us to drop in energy. So what happens is we want to eat more carbohydrates. Also, when we produce insulin and we're not getting that preferred source of energy, which is that fat, what happens there is we become hungry. This is where your weight gain potentially can spiral out of control. So your fat cells can't release fat for energy. The insulin from the carbohydrates is preventing that from happening. The insulin is making you hungry. The insulin is causing you to crave more carbohydrates. So what you end up with is high blood sugar levels, high insulin levels, and that's where the problem is. Question: does eating all the time make you fat, or does being fat make you eat all the time? Because we're actually overweight, our body just makes us want to eat all the time to try and crave these energy levels. So we're told to exercise more. So we need to exercise more to control this weight. The problem there is that we haven't got the energy because the insulin is keeping energy levels low. It's really hard for us to find the energy to go and do our exercise. So we've put the weight on. Fat cells are producing all the time. We can't get the energy we want. We're craving more sugars, and we haven't got the energy to do our exercise. It's a real effort for us to do so. But you can see where this is going. It's a real problem. Now, there's been tests done. A guy back in the 60s took some prisoners. He fed them the correct amount of nutrients for the day, the right fat levels, the right protein levels for the day, and they were fine. They didn't put any weight on. They weren't getting hungry. They maintained their correct weight. Also, on a separate test, what he did was he fed them a huge amount of carbohydrates. So basically they could eat as much carbohydrates as they wanted to. Cakes, breads, pasta, all these bits and pieces. And they just ate huge amounts of food, absolutely huge amount of foods, and they all put weight on. The second part of the test was he gave them fat. So he gave them as much fat as they wanted to eat, predominantly animal fats, butters, meats and so on. They really struggled to overeat. Here's an example. Say you were to eat, say you had a plate of spaghetti or chili con carne, something like that. So you've got carbohydrates and you've got meat together. So you had those proteins, fats, carbohydrates. You would feel sustained with fullness for a period of time, then you would get hungry later on. If you were to just eat a bigger plate of the meat and no carbohydrates at all, for one, it'd be quite hard for you to eat that same amount of meat with and fats. Secondly, you would sustain that fullness for a considerable amount of time and a lot longer. What we're trying to get at there is it's the carbohydrates that's going to keep you hungry. As long as you're aware of that while you're trying to control your weight, just be aware that that's what the carbohydrates are going to do. I'm a big advocate of intermittent fasting, where we fast for 16 hours a day and eat for 8 hours a day, or 18 hours and eat 6 hours a day. So just recently, I'm not a big fan of following calories, but what I did was I got the app MyFitnessPal and worked out what calories it wanted me to eat for a day. This was mainly done initially because I wanted to make sure I was getting enough calories, because when you've got a short eating window, sometimes it was difficult for me to make sure I got enough calories in and micronutrients in for that day in that short eating window. And then what happened was we went away for a weekend. And we're staying with some friends, and when I woke up in the morning, they were making breakfast. I didn't want to appear rude, so I just thought, okay, a weekend of not fasting won't do me any harm. But I continued to monitor my calories throughout that day. There's no way I could control the amount of calories I wanted to eat. I was just hungry all day, so I was keeping a tab on my calories. I went just over on both days. I was hungry quite a few times during the day. It just confirmed you can't lose weight through reduction of calories, because you'll just continuously be hungry. Unless, that is, if you're following sort of a ketogenic diet where you're really reducing the amount of carbohydrates going to your body, you're primarily getting fats for energy, and you'll be fine. So your solution really, if you are overweight, you want to get that weight off, you are not going to do it by continue to eat carbohydrates, starch carbohydrates, low fiber carbohydrates. It will not happen. If you want to reduce your calorie intake, that's going to be very difficult as well. If you do focus on fat predominantly for energy, you will lose weight. If you intermittent fast, you will lose weight. And this is my preferred source because of the huge increase in growth hormone and feeling well being, and it's just a lot easier doing intermittent fasting than the ketogenic, but people really speak highly of the ketogenic way of eating. So I hope this video has helped you to understand a few things. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel would be great, and thanks for watching.